the Flanders pilot. It's somewhat different from the other pilots in the sense that Flanders is a region, not a city. So we had use cases and experiments in a couple of municipalities across Flanders. I'll be talking about one, the one we started with initially, and that's still ongoing. We're still working with that community in Herzele because it brings the most complete story at the moment, because we've been working there for a long time. But we've also worked in Ghent, for instance, which is shown in the picture here in the introductory slide. Yeah, we had some challenges. I focused here on challenges that set us a bit apart, maybe in a way, being this focused on the region. Also, the consortium consisted of regional authorities and the service provider, which meant we had a bigger distance from the local level, from the citizens, but also from the local policymakers. So yeah, one of our challenges was finding suitable policy implementations, getting to network with local policymakers to find policies that fitted our timing and had an effect on both air quality and traffic, which was our focus point. But also in Flanders, yeah, we have quite an extensive reference monitoring network. We have an air quality plan in effect already over some years now, and we know that a lot of the remaining work is at the local level, and we wanted to link that also to what we're doing at the Flemish level. So we needed a robust experimental design as well. And as I said, we're somewhat farther from working with citizens, maybe even less experienced also than some other partners in compare. So yeah, establishing that buy-in from participants, maintaining it was also a challenge for us, to which we found some solutions and workarounds. A different way of phrasing these challenges, and those are the questions I'll be trying to answer today, is: can citizen scientists monitor policy impact? Can citizen science strengthen local policy? And can citizen science change behavior? So as I said, I'll focus on one case in a smaller town called Herzele, that's been running for over a year now. Just briefly, some context initially. This is the citizen sensing framework that we applied in Herzele, to talk you through about the general steps we've undertaken and where we are at the moment. So as I said, we were a bit farther from the local level, so we used existing networks where local authorities also participated, and especially intermediaries, to get the word out that we're looking for pilot experiments. We have these intermunicipal agencies that support local authorities, and they were very useful actually to find our pilot cases, and also for community building. Once we selected the case, in this instance Herzele, we used this very broad communication to get to the citizens, and we involved actually the local authority, because that helped trigger citizens. We were able to use official municipality letters, logos, those kind of things, and that made it all seem very official and recognizable also to the citizens. Planning wise, as far as the policy impact monitoring goes, we were quite top down, because we are an environmental agency, very experienced in monitoring. So we recruited participants, but the monitoring plan, basically the activities that were to be carried out, were all planned by us in this case. We did have some bottom-up work in the educational track, on which I'll touch briefly at the end of the presentation. Obviously, citizens were involved in sensing, as in the other pilots as well, by measurements on traffic and air quality, but also in prototype development. So this may be one point I'd like to make already. We communicated early on to the citizens that one of our devices was an early prototype for black carbon measurements, and we were actually asked them to help us further improve the development of the device. And I think that might have limited the dropout somewhat on our end, because we communicated so very explicitly on them helping us developing it, that it might be a small insight already. Raising awareness. We did workshops on traffic, road safety, and air quality. We also had the educational track. I'll talk about that a bit later on. And then, to make change happen, translate things into actions, we had this data cafe, which is a setup I'll talk to you about as well, which is very solution oriented and helps you talk about solutions rather than problems. And currently we're looking into the legacy thing and how we can coach intermediaries like the intermunicipal agencies to copy our approach without us setting everything up. Okay. Into a bit more detail. First questions. Can citizen science monitor policy impact, and can we get to a conclusion there? What we did in Herzele was the municipality implemented a school street, which means the street in which the school is located is closed down when students are entering the school and when they are exiting it. So basically half an hour to an hour each day, in morning and in evening. There's a bit more explanation here on the slide. You need some volunteers to actually put the temporary fencing there, and other than that, it works quite easily. Here you can see our monitoring network. So we had about 20 traffic counting devices in the area. We used 12 air quality monitoring devices, of which 10 were actually located close to the school streets. 2 others were at the reference site for calibration purposes. We did measurements for a couple of months, and then we used our dashboard at the bottom left to see whether we could very easily explain what was happening to citizens, and the insights on traffic were actually very clear. You can see here the green bars is what happens in the school street, the yellow bars is what happens in the neighborhood. You can see the first 2 are pedestrians and cyclists. They go up, so we saw a 3-fold increase in cyclists in the school street. No big changes in the neighborhood. And then cars obviously go down in the school street only by 60% because the period we considered here was a bit longer than when the school street was in effect. But you also see a slight increase in the neighboring streets. So that means that traffic shifted somewhat from the school street to the neighboring areas. It was mainly on the primary roads that you can see here on the +50 and +104 yellow arrows, but also in some other areas which was less desired, and we worked on that actually during the data cafe. So data cafe was one of our solutions that I mentioned earlier on. The concept is similar to hackathons. You work with community generated data, but instead of focusing on data analysis, we provide an expert objective analysis on the community data, and we start from that point and talk about, okay, what does this mean for you? How did you experience this as an inhabitant of the town? Was it good, bad? What other solutions do you see? And that actually allowed us to gather a lot of input on flanking measures. And so we received the feedback that the school street implementation was experienced positively, which helped to create the intention with the local municipality to maintain the school street and keep the implementation running for a longer time. But they also suggested some mitigating measures for the neighboring streets that were affected. So change it to one-way traffic in a parallel road, cycling lanes, and a speed limit reduction, and those are actually included now in a proposal by the municipality, by the council, for extending the school street. A political decision has not yet been made, but you clearly see here that the input we gathered at the data cafe got translated into a policy brief, let's say, at the municipal level. Also with the school, they were able to do a minor change by closing down the back entrance to the school, which had some unwanted side effects based on a suggestion from citizens. So this data cafe approach, where people can walk in and out freely, and you can really get into these in-depth conversations about what's going on in the municipality and what solutions they see and how they experience it. This really helps in linking policy and citizens. So lastly, I'm already at my 3rd question. Can you change behavior through citizen science? We also work with schools, because we think, okay, kids are not yet as set in their ways as adults, often have a more open mind, but also they're a good way to like get a conversation going in a household within a family. So we did a lot of experiments with primary schools, also in Ghent, which is where the pictures are actually from in this case, but also the high school in Herzele. So in Ghent, we organize these walks, and kids use the mobile device going from their home to school. So that's where these pictures are from. But in the secondary, so in high school in Herzele, students were able to design their own experiments. Find hotspots, investigate sources, do personal exposure monitoring, and present their conclusions. And we also asked them about their transportation choices before and after these series of classes took place. And we saw that this educational track in the classes that did these experiments resulted in an additional modal shift actually away from passenger cars and towards active and collective transport modes, which is an interesting effect in particular because this experiment took place in winter and almost already 1 year after introduction of the school street. So we consider this effect as unrelated to the implementation of the school street and actually really directly linked to the educational track that we implemented. On a side note, also, it's a very convenient way of attracting some media attentions. It's also featured in the kids' news, for instance, in Flanders. And then, some recommendations from our experience in Flanders. We work with this community in Herzele, and something that helped us a lot because we're not that experienced in working with citizens directly was identifying local champions. And we actually now distinguish 3 types. You have these technical champions that have this higher than average technical knowledge or skill set. And you can look for them once you've done your recruitment, and you can kind of lean on them and ask them to further support you or further support other participants. For instance, one of them owns a 3D printer actually, and he's completely redesigned the casing of one of our devices. But there's also functional champions. So these have a pre-existing leading role in the community. You can actively seek them out actually in advance already. Teachers are an example, but also members of sports clubs, organizations, people setting up other kinds of organizations. There was also in Herzele this group of people that met every month, a group of 20 or 30 people, and they had dinner together and just talked about various things. And these can also help you get the word of mouth going. And one very important one that's often overlooked, we did not use that one in Herzele, but we used it in one of our other pilot cases. Your own staff or staff of participating organizations. I mean, especially when you work with local authorities, they're likely to have staff members living in that municipality. Try and get them involved as well, and they can help you support the project. I'll go over the other ones very, very briefly to not take up too much more time, but literally get citizens and policymakers together. We use the data cafe for that. Didn't mention it earlier, but we provided an objectivized basis and an informal and relaxed setting, and both the policymakers and the citizens were there, and that also got the conversation going, and we could just tried steering it towards solutions. Obviously problems come up, you can't solve everything, but it worked very well in Herzele, and as I said, it led to the policy brief and the idea of implementing some additional mitigating measures. And learning by doing provides a solid base for behavioral change. We've cut it down to a very simple learn, do, reflect flow now. So teach them a bit, either if it's kids in schools, but also the citizens, teach them a bit through a workshop, have them do an experiment, do measurements, and then have them reflect, for instance, in a data cafe. And that just makes the message stick. And we clearly see that the behavior does change substantially and on the longer term also in our experience. So that's what I wanted to say for the Flanders case. I'll not reiterate on the points that the other pilots have already made.